What is going on, FA Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with Jon Impemba, and this is the DFS NBA live stream as we get you ready for this big slate here on this
Yes,
Wednesday.
11 games. Whew.
It's a big one, man. It's a big one. Jon Impemba, how's everything with you, man? We're gonna go over something that we never thought we'd see in just a second. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I mean, let's say it's a lot to get to. Some high totals, some nice point spreads, a star-studded slate here with it 11 games. Player pool's huge. Got to think that draft percentage is going to be spread across all the top stars here tonight. So it'll be pretty interesting to see the lineup combos because not a ton of injuries, maybe one we could see later, but that has left us without a ton of obvious value either.
Yes, and that one player is Kawhi Leonard, someone who we've grown accustomed to not playing in back-to-backs on that second leg. But
Right.
with the health of Paul George, right now has not been ruled out, Jon. And with the health of Paul George in question, this could end up being a big spot, almost a rare spot regarding Kawhi on the second leg of a back-to-back.
Yeah, I mean, in years past, they've obviously been a little, hesitant to wear him down early in the season, especially with these back-to-back games. Running him a lot of minutes. We know that he's had that, knee, quad, whatever injury, dating back to San Antonio, and since then they've really tried to load manage him. And we know that this is going to be a grueling season. They're really, compacting the schedule. It's a shorter year, trying to get all the games, and so we would have expected maybe him to sit here, but he's not on the injury report. There's no word of him sitting out quite yet, and Paul George is dealing with a little bit of an injury. George ruled out late last night after roster lock, and now here he is again, questionable to play today. If he sits out, could be another day where they have just Kawhi out there. If they don't play either of them, it'd be tough, I think, for them to be overly competitive against Golden State. I think that's why we'll see one or the other for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we have to. And again, it's a rare occasion when Kawhi Leonard's going to play in a back-to-back, but we will have to wait and see. So just be careful when setting those lineups. Other injuries that we have to watch out for. Christian Wood of the Rockets is a game-time decision with a knee injury. Been dealing with a little bit of soreness. Marcus Smart with that thumb, also questionable. Lauri Markkanen and Tomas Satoransky for the Bulls will still be out with COVID. Marcus Morris has not played all year for those Clippers as well. And if he were to get in, he'd be in a big spot if both Leonard and Paul George sat. He hasn't played, but he is questionable, so he's been upgraded to questionable for this game. Alec Burks for the Knicks is out. Tyrese Halliburton questionable with that wrist. Jeff Teague still questionable, so that's Marcus Smart and Jeff Teague, both right now questionable. Reggie Bullock questionable with the knee soreness too. Obi Toppin for the Knicks out, and same with Nerlens Noel. And I'm also just seeing in regards to Evan Fournier, who's questionable. I saw the Magic release their starting lineups, Jon, and no Fournier in that starting lineup. Clark being in there is a strong indicator that it's looking like Fournier is going to be sitting.
Yeah, I'm expecting we'll get that probably any second now, seeing that he is not in that starting lineup. There it is right there. Evan Fournier officially ruled out. Interesting that they're going with Gary Clark here. Michael Carter-Williams had been in the starting lineup, and he also is not in the game today. So I was curious which way they would go. James Ennis is active tonight, expected to be limited off the bench. And a favorite of mine early on this season has been Terrence Ross. And he's been playing out really well, and they're keeping him on the bench, which I think is actually maybe a smart thing. Ross is their sixth guy. That's a role that he's familiar with playing, and a role that he's going to continue to play. So keeping him on the bench and letting him still sort of have that natural rotation, I think makes a lot of sense. But it also, for me, puts Cole Anthony further in play. Another guy that I've touted a handful of times here. He was a rookie that they drafted this year out of North Carolina. He played 21 minutes the other night off the bench. Again, no Carter-Williams. They're short on depth at the guard position. I could see Cole Anthony, again, another slate that's short on value, potentially him on FanDuel. He's only $4,000.
Just coming out there, no Evan Fournier if you're just checking us out here on fantasyalarm.com. But let's go through the DFS NBA playbook here on the website that was written up by James Grande. You can follow James at _real_Grande. We're going to go position by position, just give you guys some options at different price ranges, Jon. So when it comes to paying up on a big slate, look at that point guard spot first. You got guys like Curry, Trae Young on the slate, even Ben Simmons too. And we all know with Washington, they're not going to be really defending that lane too much. Even somebody else that's priced up a bit. Darren Fox on DraftKings, 8,200. Of the high-priced guys, which one stands out to you the most?
I mean, I'm big on Trae Young here against Charlotte. Charlotte defense this year has been abysmal. There's a reason why Charlotte's been blown out in a lot of games, this season. They have some scoring punch, but they're not stopping anybody. Trae Young at the top for me makes a lot of sense. Ben Simmons is the cover of the playbook, and James and I went back a little back and forth on this one a little bit. Also in chat, I'm not necessarily as high on Ben Simmons as James is today. For me, what's hurting Simmons' value has been the scoring. This year he's averaging almost 2 full shots less per game. His points per game average is down, which means you really need him, especially on DraftKings, to get you those triple doubles. You need him to get the steals and blocks that we know he's known for to exceed that value. 8,700, 8,800. The way he's playing right now, if he's only giving you 10, 11, 12 points, then he's going to struggle to give you that 5-6x return that you want in those GPP contests. At 8,700, you're looking for 43, 44, 45 fantasy points to get you 5x. And on FanDuel, he's only done that one time this season, 2 times this season rather. So, I think it's a great spot against the Wizards. I wonder if he's going to be capable of really getting there. We need him to shoot more.
Yeah, and this is a guy who doesn't shoot from the outside.
No, he doesn't.
Now, Ben Simmons does have some post moves, but the problem, John, with Ben Simmons is that he's such a fierce driver that he's going to continue using that. So I'm not really seeing him line up in the post as much, but I've seen him have these high release point one-handed floaters that he's had in the post. And I just wish he would utilize them more, because if he can get up there that high, even if the defender has a few inches on him, he's still going to be able to get it if he has that high arc that he has. But we don't see that enough because Ben Simmons attacking, he's one of the best attackers in the league.
He is. He's really good at getting to the lane. The other thing that hurts him is he doesn't hit free throws. He's not good. He's not a good free throw shooter. If he could get to the lane and get fouled and hit free throws, it would boost his value up tremendously. But he's a driving point guard who can't hit free throws even, which hurts his value even more. Plus, they're playing in an offense that doesn't space the floor terribly well. They got better adding Danny Green and Seth Curry, but, Joel Embiid's still down there on the post. And if they're going to go down low, like Embiid sort of there clogging the way, I think a lot of that and the lack of range is what's hurt Simmons this year, and the fact that they did add shooters. He is kicking out to Seth Curry, who's having a really strong start to his year. We've seen Tobias Harris have some really strong starts to the game. So relying less on him as a shooter and more as a distributor and defensive player, I think is hurting some of his upside. But that said, Russell Westbrook, not a great offensive player. Not a great defensive player.
He's all offense, John.
He's amazing offensively, not a great defensive player, and he turns the ball over a lot. Maybe there's an opportunity for Simmons to get more steals today to help offset some of the lack of scoring.
Let's talk about some of the mid-priced options at the point guard spot. And let's just have a little fun here, because you and I haven't gotten a chance on any of the programs that we're on together to talk about this. Ball versus ball. I didn't think we'd be debating this early. Come on, man. You saw what I thought of LaMelo Ball going.
I know, you hated him.
I hated it, and I still really don't like it. And you're seeing it now, why Charlotte needed a big man. But still, I digress, because LaMelo Ball, along with the other Charlotte guards, have still been producing when they're hitting their shots. So between him and his brother Lonzo in New Orleans, looking at the price point for Lonzo, he's $6,500 on both, and then for LaMelo, $69,000 and $6,000. So between the two, who has impressed you more with the role that they had? And then I'll tell you who's impressed me more, and who do you like in their respective matchup better?
Yeah, so I think I definitely like LaMelo, and I liked LaMelo. You and I went back and forth on this play. LaMelo has always been touted as the better of the Ball brothers there, right? He took the least conventional route to get there because LeVar pulled him out of school and had him go play overseas, and he couldn't go to college and all these weird things, and LeVar sort of really I'm not going to say stunted his progression, because he was a top lottery pick in the draft, but we didn't get to see him traditionally play in front of us like we did his brother Lonzo, so we weren't really sure. But LaMelo comes out as a better shooter, in my opinion. I think he is on par as a passer. And like his brother, they're tall, they're lanky guards. He rebounds really well. So for me, I'm sticking with LaMelo here over Lonzo because I feel like on that offense, the way he comes off the bench in that second unit, like he really is taking over, some of the high usage play there. The one concern, and James points this out rightly so, is that a lot of the damage that LaMelo has done in these games have been in games where Charlotte's been blown out.
Right.
Is it only that he's getting this additional run because of the blowout nature of these games? I don't particularly think so. I think he's just in their rotation as it is. But Atlanta tonight doesn't play a lot of defense. It's going to be a high-scoring game. And if Charlotte continues to struggle defensively and goes down by 10, 12 points in this one, it's just an even better matchup for LaMelo. So I'm going to go LaMelo over Lonzo here. The one thing to note with the Pelicans this season is they're playing at a very, very slow pace. They're playing a really strong half-court offense. They're not pushing it as much. They're getting in their half-court set. Adams is down there. So is Zion. Ingram's having a fantastic year, but it's not leaving much for Lonzo in terms of scoring. Now he's filled up the stat sheet nicely. But, I think it is on both sides. I think you're paying more for Lonzo than you are to LaMelo. It could be flipped, I think, maybe on FanDuel.
On one of them, you're paying more for Melo. On FanDuel, you're paying more for Melo.
Yeah, so FanDuel, you're paying more for Melo, but on DraftKings, you're playing less. So I'm definitely playing LaMelo, I think, over on DraftKings where you get the bonuses for the double-doubles and potential triple-double upside. I'm probably full fade on Lonzo, even in a good matchup against the Thunder.
I like that he's filled up the stat sheet, Lonzo. I wasn't on him at all, and I'm still impressed that he's been doing what he can to still help us produce from the fantasy aspect. But when you're looking at the Charlotte Hornets, they need LaMelo at this point if they're going to generate any kind of consistent flow on offense. You said it, John. Yeah. They don't really have anyone down low. They don't really have anyone. Zeller's hurt. Bismack Biyombo is raw as hell. And you've got PJ Washington, who's not 100% right now either. So with that, they need these guards to score. Kind of like you mentioned, kind of like the Thunder last year. They needed their 3 guards to score, and they did. And they saw a lot of success. It's the same thing with Charlotte, which is why I'm with you here. And I'm not only going to spend down on DraftKings, but I am going to go with LaMelo over Lonzo. So that right there.
We got some additional lineup news here for those wondering about the Cavs starting lineup tonight. Rookie Isaac Okoro is in the starting lineup, as is Cedi Osman, who had been coming off the bench. So those two re-enter the lineup there. Dante Exum, we know that his injury is going to keep him out for a couple of weeks. Then Darius Garland was also ruled out for tonight. So Okoro and Osman are entering the starting lineup tonight.
Yeah, I mean, that'll be, here's the thing with Cedi. With him, he's just going to stand there at the arc. That's what you have to know. I mean, if Nant's going to get fed, Nant's going to get fed. But Cedi Osman just sits there at the arc the whole time. That's pretty much what he does. And he's a decent-sized body. Let's move on to the shooting guard spot here because I guess we can't avoid talking about this guy because New Year's, same story, but he's very priced up. James Harden against the Pacers. Where are you standing? You all in or all out? Because that's when you're paying 11 plus. That's how you have to be with this kind of play.
Yeah, it's an interesting slate because the top guys, and there's a lot of talent on this 11-game slate. It's 11 games. But when you're looking at guys like Harden, and not to jump too far ahead, but Giannis, but I want to clump them both together here. Giannis is in a situation where there's a huge point spread against Detroit. And then Harden's in a situation where he has a really strong supporting cast around him. And we've seen since those guys have been healthy, we haven't had those explosive James Harden games. He started off the year 72 fantasy points, playing 43 minutes when it was all by himself. And then the last 2 games he's been on there, 52 and 43, and that's got John Wall, that's got Eric Gordon, and Christian Wood has been fantastic for them. Now Wood is questionable to play tonight. If he sits out, that will help a little bit. But does that bump DeMarcus Cousins up, who they've been limiting due to conditioning issues? Like, Harden is a fantastic play. I'll never tell you not to play him. But I feel like these guys being around him, in 38 minutes against Dallas, 21 points, 10 assists, only 3 rebounds, 43 fantasy points. You can't pay $11,000 and get 43 fantasy points. That's going to kill your lineup. So, JPP only for both of those guys for me tonight, just lumping them together because they're both so expensive and the top price guys on the slate. Giannis against the Pistons the other night was still able to get 60 fantasy points. For whatever reason, somehow Detroit was able to hang around long enough to give Giannis the 36 minutes. But we've seen other games this season where in blowouts he played less than 30 and gave you 30 fantasy points. So for me, they're both GPP guys. Just the potential for the blowouts or lack of usage going their way, but they're elite talents.
So we just talked about James Harden as those GPP options, but what about Zach LaVine? That's someone that I'm more looking at. That's the camp. I don't love spending $11K. I know it's Harden, but yeah. I don't like the price point. I'm turned off by it. And I wish with Zach LaVine it was a little bit lower, but at least I know that he'll get the shots. And going up against Sacramento, this is a matchup that I want to exploit. And so if I'm unwilling to pay for Harden, like James Grande has in the playbook, and also with Zach LaVine's shooting issues that he's had then because of that, maybe people will be off of Zach LaVine.
Yeah, it's not just LaVine's, the price point's $8,100. For me, it's really the fact that they're going to be on the second night of a back-to-back, and he played 42 minutes last night. So jump shooters, second nights of back-to-back, sometimes are their legs going to be there, traveling still. I'm not in on LaVine tonight because of that reason. I was in on LaVine last night against Portland. Didn't come through as much as I wanted to. I had played on the previous game against Dallas, and he smashed for 58 fantasy points. But the fact that they are on that second night of the back-to-back, the fact they played so many minutes, I worry a little bit about him maybe being a little bit sluggish. Someone at the same price point that I could be a little bit more interested in is Donovan Mitchell on FanDuel. Last night the Nets just ran Utah out of New York, essentially. So while they're on a second night of a back-to-back as well, they don't have to travel much. They're playing the Knicks, and we saw Mitchell play only 29 minutes in that game. So it wasn't this 36-minute back-and-forth epic game that he had to put forth. He's somewhat limited due to that exposure. So, if you're looking to pivot around Zach LaVine, Fred VanVleet, Donovan Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, that tier for me is probably where I'd end up going.
Now let's go down about 5 tiers with shooting guard here, because James Grande has 2 shooting guards in this playbook that are dirt cheap. And I see it. Austin Rivers, you were just mentioning the Knicks-Jazz matchup. Austin Rivers, entering the lineup, he's helping out. So in big ways, too, with that scoring. That secondary scoring is going to be huge for them. And Damian Dotson, the former Knick, now member of the Cleveland Cavaliers, taking on the Magic. And we know about Cleveland's injuries that they have that you talked about. And the price point being for Rivers, $37.36, for Dotson, $35.42. Very affordable.
Yeah, I've never been an Austin Rivers guy. His usage rate is almost nil, basically, no matter what team that he goes to. The minutes, he played 33 minutes the other day, and he gave you like 14 fantasy points. So I'm probably out on him. And somebody that I'm surprised isn't in his playbook, and this isn't really a secret. We've talked about it on the podcast, so I feel comfortable bringing this up, is Emmanuel Quickley. Somebody that the Knicks used and drafted this year in the first round. He came back from the injury list and played 18 minutes against Atlanta and gave you 25 fantasy points off the bench. I could see him taking on a bigger role. If Reggie Bullock is ruled out tonight, we still don't have that news yet. Alec Burks has already been ruled out, but if Bullock ends up getting ruled out as well, sure, we could end up seeing Rivers jump into that starting lineup, but they're going to need depth in that secondary unit. And I can see Quickley taking on a larger role tonight, even more than the 18 minutes we saw from him. I would go that direction, I think, over Austin Rivers. In the Dotson thing, he's going to play off the bench, but I liked him as the starter the other day when he saw those 30 minutes. Now that Okoro's back and Osman's in the starting lineup, I wonder what's going to be there for Dotson. If you look at the minutes that Okoro had played in the 2 games this season, he played 40 and 30 something, I think it was. So, they're not afraid to play Okoro in that starting lineup. So Dotson, for me, takes a little bit of a hit just not starting there.
Yeah, Dotson also could be a little bit scoring dependent, too. If he's just standing there at the arc, that's a little bit of a problem. Whereas with Rivers, I don't mind Austin Rivers coming back into this lineup, needing a few games to get used to it. I like what you said about Quickley, because Quickley will drive and shoot, and he'll be pretty aggressive too. And coming off the hip injury with the way he looked, definitely looks A-okay. Before we move on to the small forwards, John, I just want to go over a piece of injury news that I saw just come across the wire regarding your Celtics. Jeff Teague not going to play. Marcus Smart will play, though.
Yeah.
So that's just something of note there. So it looks like Mr. Pritchard is going to take a back seat when it comes to this slate. No, you're going to still go after him?
Well, he's not going to start, right? Smart's been starting at point guard, regardless. But if you look at the minutes that Pritchard had been playing, I mean, he was in the mid-20s regardless as that second unit guard there. So, is he going to go for 34 points tonight? Because 34 fantasy points because he played 32 minutes? Probably not, because Smart's starting now, so you're going to take a hit. But you look at some of those other games where he played mid-20s minutes and he gave you 20 fantasy points on average. Now, they did price him up a little bit. Probably can't pay for him on FanDuel anymore. But on DraftKings, where at least you get that 3-point bonus a little bit, if you needed the value there, I would still be okay with it.
Let's talk about some of the mid-court players. We'll move on to forwards here, because guys that technically can qualify as both small forwards and power forwards, and depending on site, when looking to pay up, man, I mean, we were just talking, you mentioned the Jaylen Brown tier. What about the Tatum tier? Because when you're looking at some of the higher priced guys between Tatum and Brandon Ingram, I don't know how you don't go Ingram in this one.
Yeah, for me, it's two things. One, it's an absolute smash spot for the Pelicans. The Thunder are a miserable defensive team. They're not out there to win many games. There's no one really on that team that's going to go out and defend Ingram on that roster. It is an 8-point spread. It's only a 213 game total, so it's not a high total comparatively to other teams, and we're sort of projecting a little bit of a potential blowout there. But I mean, Ingram's just been so damn good. I mean, and the ownership on him has not been there. And on FanDuel especially, the way they've now sort of loaded that tier up, because, Tatum had been a power forward. Some of these other, Middleton had been a shooting guard. They added in some strong plays to the small forward tier now. It's gonna depress ownership, I think. At $8,800, it's a great spot. If Paul George gets ruled out, I think you're going to want to pay up for Kawhi Leonard here. Kawhi Leonard last night, sure, second night of a back-to-back, but 57 fantasy points as, the primary guy on that team. So if he's not ruled out, I don't imagine they're just going to limit him and have him be on the floor. I think if he's active to play. So, I like Ingram. Tatum against Miami could be a little bit tough. I know he had a really good series against them, and nobody's seemingly stopping him at this point anyways. And Ingram is a little bit of a discount, so I don't hate it. Again, we talked about it on the podcast last night. I rattled off like 15 small forwards. It's such a deep position tonight.
I mean, is it so deep that maybe we stay away from someone like a DeAndre Hunter tonight? Or do you still go after him? The reason I bring him up, I know you love him so much.
Are you just setting me up for this? No, of course we're playing DeAndre Hunter. He was the cover of the podcast. I tweeted out my little rant about him last night. And even if I am wrong tonight, which I don't feel like I'm going to be, Charlotte ranks 27th against small forwards this season in DVP scoring. And DeAndre Hunter over on DraftKings to me is an absolute free square at $5,400. I don't know why they did not touch his price tag. I think they bumped him up $100 or $200 total dollars. The man has been playing out of his mind on FanDuel with 3 straight games of over 30 fantasy points. He's gone for 37 fantasy points twice already this season. He's playing a ton of minutes. He's giving you on the defensive end. He's rebounding. He's scoring consistently. He's hitting the 3-point shot. It doesn't make any sense to me why DeAndre Hunter is so cheap over on DraftKings tonight, which basically probably means I'm cursing him and he's going to go and shoot 2 for 10. But you have to play him over on DraftKings. I don't think there's any way to get around it. I mean, we look for 5X typically for our lineups there, and 5X at $5,400. It means you only need him to get 27 fantasy points, something he's essentially eclipsed in every game this season and gone even further. So a must play for me over there. And then on FanDuel, if you want to go 6K for him, I still think he's really strong. That mid tier again. Harrison Barnes, I think, doesn't get enough love night in and night out. A really good spot for him against Chicago. RJ Barrett, who he was one of my favorite players going into this season. Thibodeau is been a godsend basically for the Knicks in terms of fantasy value. The last couple of games here for Barrett, and one of them was an overtime game, but 43 minutes, 42 minutes, 36 minutes, 38 minutes, 38 minutes, 37 minutes. This is the Tom Thibodeau blueprint. He plays his starters. He plays his core starters as many minutes as possible. And this is the coach that we saw guys like Jimmy Butler and Zach LaVine sort of develop under. I'm in on Barrett having a breakout year. He had a tremendous game against Atlanta for 52 FanDuel points. Big spot here for him against the Utah team that, again, got smoked last night.
Yeah, if he's shooting great, I hate to say this because you could say this about any streaky shooter. If he's shooting well, everything's going well.
Well, he's not even really a three-point shooter either. Like, that's what I like about Batty. He's a guy that gets his points, and he doesn't rely on the outside shot. The outside shot hits a couple times, fantastic, but he's somebody that's getting to the rim, getting to the free throw line, even more importantly, and making his money there. So
you saw that change in him last year, right before play was halted in March. That's why he was performing better. He wasn't relying on that jumper as much, and he has great ball handling skills and gets to the rim with ease. So
he was a fantastic pick for the franchise. I mean, a lot of people are upset that the Knicks didn't get Zion. I completely understand. RJ Barrett, I think, is a star in the making in this league. So
yeah, he has pedigree, and he's very focused and determined. And this is a guy that I don't think is going to gain that ego. This guy is a competitive dude, and he's a great ball handler as well. So I'm actually very happy with the pick, even if some nights when he's shooting, it just makes you want to shake your head. Let's look at the power forward spot quickly. You mentioned Giannis already, but some of the other options that we have already, I want to get to one option here, and that's Nicholas Batum. And this is someone who, even in season-long rankings, John, I'm starting to have to consider because he does just enough. And it's annoying, and it sucks. And this is the guy you don't like to see 9 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. But that all adds up. And if you're building stars and scrubs, I mean, again, we need to see the official news regarding Marcus Morris. But if he's out again, Nicholas Batum, he does more than score, and he's still super cheap.
Yeah, it's not even the Marcus Morris news, too. I mean, Paul George being out last night, we saw Batum play 35 minutes and score 21 points with 9 boards. I mean, he got a lot of offensive upside because of the fact that George was out of the lineup. Now, Batum is another player with a long injury history where he played a lot of minutes, and now it's the second night of a back-to-back. It would have been a situation where it wouldn't have shocked me to see Batum sit. But he did play a back-to-back already this season. He played December 29th against Minnesota, 23 minutes, and then Portland on December 30th, he played 26 minutes. So they didn't really limit him too much in that instance. He has 3 straight games of over 30 minutes, and he does just enough really to get you there. $4,400 over on FanDuel. It's a really good number to spend down. And again, we're talking about a slate that doesn't have a ton of value. Another guy that maybe in that same tier you could take a look at. It is the second night of a back-to-back, but Thad Young last night, 23 minutes, 22 fantasy points. We've seen him a couple times now put up some good numbers. He's $4,100 over on FanDuel. And the cover of the fast break, so I'm not giving anything away here. Kelly Olynyk is $5,000 at the power forward position. Been in the starting lineup for Miami the last handful of games. OKC, 19-8, 28 fantasy points. Got a little bit of the revenge narrative against Boston. And Olynyk is an interesting guy because he also does a little bit of everything. He's a really good outside short shooter. He can get some blocks. He can get some steals because he's a 7-footer and he rebounds. So I don't mind Olynyk right here at 5K. And we've seen him at times when he gets hot. Like, he's one of the streakier players in the NBA where he can put up monster numbers. So if he's in the starting lineup again, $5,000 on FanDuel. His DraftKings price tonight has him out at $4,400. Jeez.
Right.
I think you have to play him if he's in the starting lineup.
Yeah, and remember, Boston's not that big when it comes to side. So you don't have to worry about that if he likes to try to get inside.
And they've been starting Daniel Tice at power forward next to Tristan Thompson. So, yeah, I think Olynyk even has the athletic advantage there instead of it, typically being Tatum at the power forward spot.
Kelly Olynyk still relevant after these few years here.
Listen, Olynyk got a bad rap in Boston because 3 picks after him was taking Giannis. All right, so and so we all wanted Olynyk to be a little bit more than I think he ended up being, but I honestly did like him as a Celtic, and he's a really great role player that does what he does. So
I'm convinced people in Milwaukee, they didn't think Giannis was going to be this good.
No, Giannis grew 4 inches in the offseason after he was drafted. No, if Giannis was 7 feet going to that draft, he would have been a lottery pick. But
the Magic thought Fran Vasquez was going to be good 15 years ago. You know who that is, John?
No, never.
Exactly. Let's move on to centers very quickly. Talk about a couple of high-priced guys because you know me, man. I try to not take bias and take it to the next day when it comes to daily. But when the Vooch is on the slate, especially with Mr. Fournier not in. I love the Vooch, man. Even 8,700, if he's under 9K, the number one option that he is going up against Cleveland, just because Andre Drummond grabs a lot of rebounds, does not make him a staunch defender. And Vucevic, in my opinion, will still have his way.
Yeah, and actually, big news right now breaking, not to skip it. This is actually center relevant because he's a center over on DraftKings, but Christian Wood just ruled out.
Wow.
So Christian Wood being ruled out is huge for a couple reasons. One, DeMarcus Cousins is now starting for Christian Wood tonight. Cousins hasn't played a ton this season. They've said it's been a conditioning issue, but he's $4,100 on FanDuel tonight. Put it this way, in 2 minutes against Dallas before he was ejected, shocker, he had 12.6 fantasy points. In 2 minutes against Dallas, he had 12 fantasy points. And 11 minutes against Sacramento, he had 14. And 13 minutes against Sacramento the game before that, he had 11. So Cousins is playing at an above point per minute fantasy point pace right now. If he's going to start and he plays 20 minutes tonight, there's a ton of upside at that 4K range. But also, Eric Gordon gets a huge bump in usage with Christian Wood out of the lineup. Now, again, they've only played a handful of games here, but Eric Gordon, I think, now becomes a fantastic play as well. Coming off the bench there, knowing that we see Cousins in the starting lineup. Cousins was coming off the bench, playing with Gordon off the bench. There's one less guy off the bench in that second unit to take shots away from Eric Gordon. So Gordon, shooting guard, small forward, I think over on DraftKings, small forward on FanDuel, a great spot. Back to Vooch, though. Love him. Always in play. Love that Gary Clark is in the starting lineup because, again, Clark isn't there to shoot. I'm not really sure why Clark is there at all. So it's not Ross. It's not Michael Carter-Williams who's going to ball handle. It's not Cole Anthony who would shoot. So really the offense here is Gordon, who's still limited, and at least as latest reports has still been limited. Markelle Fultz, and then Vucevic's getting a ton of shots here. Drummond has been frustrating lately. 25, 20, and 32 minutes the last couple of games. Really getting outplayed by the centers that he's been up against, whether it's been Sabonis, whether it's been Clint Capella, and then Vucevic the night before. So, yeah, I think we go right back to Vuk here.
Yeah, Clint Capella in a good spot, too. And I just want to say this one more thing, because Grande does have it in his playbook that he does note that if Christian Wood does not play, Jae'Sean Tate at minimum price.
Yeah.
I mean, look, they don't have a lot of big men in Houston. And so if you're looking, again, the scrub of all scrubs, Mr. Tate could be in play now that Mr. Wood is out.
Yeah, Tate plays in the wing, but they're also without Daniel House and Ben McLemore tonight. So Tate could very well find his way into some additional minutes. There's Daniel Nwaba, who I'm not a huge fan of, doesn't really ever do much for you. But yeah, again, we're looking at a team with a shorter rotation. I think John Wall becomes a fantastic play again tonight. Now, it is against the Pacers. So, it's a tough spot. Malcolm Brogdon's a good defender. Victor
I was going to be like, do you worry about pace in that matchup?
A little bit. Yeah, I think pace can certainly be a little bit of an issue. But, I like just the fact that I think these guys now have to play minutes to the lack of depth. So, a big fan of that. And you know what? I'll bump Harden up now. No Christian Wood was taking a ton of shots. He was a high usage player on this team, over 30% usage rate. I think I would give Harden a little bit of a boost now, knowing that Wood's not there and that Cousins is still more than likely going to be limited. They're going to be using PJ Tucker at the 5 again tonight for an extended time. You want to talk about centers, Turner and Sabonis, I think, are going to be in some good spots there as well.
They're going to eat. Houston, we have liftoff. No Christian Wood. Other options are boosted when it comes to their ceilings for tonight. Give John a follow on Twitter at JImpemba777. Give me a follow on Twitter at Fensty Sports. The Fantasy Alarm NBA team has you covered. John, it's been real as always. I could go on for 5 hours with you, but we've got lineups to set. And so do you. Get in the chat, fantasyalarm.com, because New Year, same story. We always dominate. No other option. We just win.